everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers Podcast. I am Jodi Grunwald. This week, my guest is Jeff Massone. Jeff has over 20 years of experience working for Fortune 100 companies, mainly leading project teams in the pharmaceutical and fast-moving consumer goods industries. Jeff's long career leading project teams and his passion for mentoring led him to become a certified speaker, trainer, and coach with Maxwell Leadership. As a result, he opened up a coaching firm in 2020 dedicated to coaching emerging professionals called Prepared Leader Consulting. Jeff is focused on supporting and assisting emerging professionals in advancing their careers more swiftly and efficiently while enabling them to achieve their desired lifestyle. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today's the Day Live It. Watch this episode via the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel or stream on all streaming sites. Have a great week, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers Podcast. I'm Jodi Grunwald, and as I say, every episode, I interview the changemakers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best way possible. And today, I have Jeff Massone with me. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jodi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad we can do this. We met under my whole other hat of working for the MODC. I'm being their CEO, and I'm excited when, I can wear a different hat, but be with the same person, which I think is super fun. So welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Jeff, I'm going to read a little bit about you, and then we're going to get into a conversation as I always do. So Jeff is the founder of Prepared Leader Consulting. Try to say that 3 times fast. Prepared Leader Consulting has over 20 years of experience in Fortune 100 companies, mainly leading project teams in the pharmaceutical and fast-moving consumer goods industries. Jeff's long career leading project teams and his passion for mentoring led him to becoming a certified speaker, trainer, and coach with Maxwell Leadership. And as a result, he opened up a coaching firm in 2020 dedicated to coaching emerging professionals. Can't wait to talk more about that. I love that whole premise. I think it's super fun, and the work you're doing is so important. In addition, Jeff also does work with STS Capital Partners, a sell-side mergers and acquisitions firm dedicated to helping entrepreneurial business owners sell their business for max value and create a lasting legacy far beyond the sale of their company. And some of its outside interests are swimming, weightlifting, beach volleyball, karaoke, which I haven't gotten to hear you yet. So I hope that's coming soon, and spending time with family and friends. Jeff, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks again, and I'm sure we'll do an MODC karaoke event one of these days, so you get to hear.
Oh, yeah. So I'm hearing you want to chair that event. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, why not? I'll raise my hand for that.
Awesome. So Jeff, let's go back in time a little bit. I like to do that with my my guests so that my listeners can learn a little bit more about the person before we talk about the business. And so, where did you grow up? Tell us what kind of a child you were while you were growing up. Were you shy, outgoing?
Absolutely. So it's funny you asked that about, going back all the way back. So first of all, I grew up in Monmouth County. So my parents were all New York City people, for all their life. And they adopted my brother and I have a twin brother. They adopted us. And after about 5 years, they said, you know what, we want to move out of the city and we want to go to Monmouth County. So 1982, we arrived in Marlboro, New Jersey, which is right around the corner from where we are right now here in Wall. And childhood was good, but I will say I was shy. So when I reflect back in terms of what I do for a living, in terms of leading project teams, in major Fortune 100 companies, coaching, getting up to speak, that would have been the last thing I would have ever guessed that I would have been doing, even in college, and I think about that whole transition, through grade school or through college, shyness was a thing. And now it's like, working in this remote world, not having those in-person connections, it actually is like, oh my God, I've turned into an extrovert, so the ensuing 20 plus years after graduating college has really changed me as a person. But yeah, my childhood journey was, pretty, traditional from the folks around here. Did a lot of sports, did baseball, swimming. With my brother and I found out we had a knack for swimming. So we swam in our local community pool, ended up running that pool as head lifeguards, and then actually launched the first high school swim team at Marlboro High School back in the middle 90s. So it's really fun to kind of have that kind of a legacy. And they're still going strong 25 plus years later. And it's just really great to see. And now my son's a swimmer over at CBA. So he's a freshman at CBA. And it's just great for him to kind of continue on in that journey, and it'll be fun to see what he can do in the sport going forward. And not to discount his sister, my daughter Sophia, is a gymnast. So she's a competitive gymnast, and she's in middle school right now. So we got a couple years before high school, but it's really cool to see that journey, in terms of elite athletics in both the swimming world and the gymnastics world. And there's so many different parallels I even see just in terms of career. What you need to do and excel at that level, even as a youngster, to be on the national level. Really, a lot of the same things that you see and you should be seeing in the business world as well. But then, coming out of college, originally I wanted to go to veterinary school. So, I did a couple semesters actually abroad at veterinary school until I kind of realized I was really, for me, it was, I loved animals and I still do. But clearly the passion wasn't strong enough because I started getting worried about the fiscal aspects of things, and being, at the time, it would have been over $200,000 worth of debt, for a career, unless you're an owner at the time, would have been like a $40,000 a year career. So I just started doing the math, never came from money. So I said, you know what, let me just stop this after 2 semesters and let me get into the working world. In terms of the working world, when you go through a collegiate experience and your main goal is to make a veterinary school, you really don't have a really good resume to prepare you for work. And I encountered that, and it took me a while to really break into the pharmaceutical industry. Actually, I didn't start working in pharma until just 6 years after I graduated college. I continued working in the small animal hospital. I also took a job at Rutgers in a research lab. But in terms of, quote unquote, a big boy job, that didn't happen until I was 28. So, starting there, that's when the career journey really began. My entrance into, corporate America, and what that was like, and how starkly different that was from the labs, how different it was from working for a small business. So, but again, those experiences kind of like, helped shape me, to what I am, today, and how this has evolved. But when I started in corporate, I was in a lab animal setting. So that's a setting that's generally, not where people want to go in their careers. And, for me, the job I had was supervision. And, quite frankly, anyone can do that job. And I was looking for a greater impact. So what had happened was I had sat down with somebody in HR for the company I worked for at the time, and I found project management. And what happened there is a whole new world of work opened up. Leading project teams. It's something I really hadn't ever done before in any sort of role. But for me, it was it really was a great opportunity. On the flip side, though, one of the things I first noticed, and I saw it in my supervisory role, was about leadership. And the leadership I had seen thus far and then continuing on really left a lot to be desired. I think you hear a lot, from the thought leaders of today, the Simon Sinek's and the Brene Browns and others, in terms of empathy and empowerment and, all of the things that you need, to be a good leader, to be an effective leader.
Mm-hmm.
Were just not being delivered. The exact opposite was being delivered. So that, year after year, it's something that I was watching, and it's not exactly, doesn't inspire you to go to work, right? You're
Right.
a job to do. You're thinking, all right, well, that's just the way it is. That's corporate America. And then one day, actually, back in 2007 or eight, one of the department heads for our project management department got us to a book study of John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership. So not only was it a book study, but he actually had the video of John Maxwell, to kind of coincide with this. And we would do it once a month or once every couple of weeks. And I was just amazed. I thought, this is the greatest content that I'd ever heard. And oh, by the way, why aren't people behaving like this, right? And it was just fascinating to me. But as quickly as that study came, is as quickly as it ended, because as soon as this department had left the company to go, to another company, this training stopped dead cold. Um, and for the longest time, it's something that I had a great experience with, but because I wasn't coached through a process, it just ended, and it really wasn't until 11 years later or so that I found out that this very author had a training and coaching company. It was through Facebook. Yeah, actually, the story goes, I was sitting at a work dinner, and I was at a work dinner after a long workshop. There was a CEO of a company, a startup that we were working with, and a marketing director for the company I was working. I think it was Bayer at the time. And we just got into a conversation of, what would you do if money were no object? So I said, well, I'd want to do leadership coaching. I had never said that before. It was not something that, was rehearsed. I mean, I never even wrote it down. I don't know where it came from. It just blurted it out. So, I think we know that our cell phones listen to what it is that we say, and sure enough, an ad for at the time it was called the John Maxwell Team. Now it's called Maxwell Leadership. An ad came up for that on Facebook, and I clicked, to learn more, and the rest is history. I started, on that leadership journey for myself, and that's what had then led me to a couple of years later launching my own coaching firm. But the difference here is this, I think when I started looking around, and when I was in the second, so I went to, you go to a couple of these, you just don't go to a Maxwell leadership event once. It's one of those things you really want to experience a few times, as many as you can, to kind of give back, to kind of help out the people that are starting along in that journey in that area as well. But I'm sitting there and wondering, man, it just hit me. It's like, if I only heard this 20 years ago, at the time, I think it was 42 or 43 or something. So I was like, I only heard this 20 years ago. Like, seriously, how different would my career have been? Right.
So I just want to share in that space right there that I think I was about the exact same age when I actually heard a coach speak. I didn't even know what a coach was. I didn't even know, coach sounds like someone on the field, not someone, doing training and sharing. And I hired someone to speak at an event. She actually was on Oprah, and I had no idea. It was a friend of mine, my daughter's friend's mom, and I needed a speaker. And she said, "Oh, my friend's mom does speaking all the time." I had no idea her credentials. And she got up and she spoke. And when she spoke, I thought the Angels song. I was like, so I feel like, just going back to what you were saying and how you said those words, and then it came up on Facebook, and going back to the shyness. So I just want to bring that in for a minute, because I, like you, extremely shy. I never wanted to be called on as a child. So the reason I stop you here is because there are people out there that feel like they don't have a voice, and they feel shy, and they don't, that's never going to be me. I want to do that, but I don't know how. And Jeff and I can turn to you and say, here's two people that never thought they'd ever get into coaching and speaking in front of large groups of people. And when it finds you, it finds you. And it gives you the courage and the strength. But I don't know about you, Jeff. I'll just speak for myself. There are always those times where you have that little bit of imposter syndrome as you're going through the process, right? Until you're actually there. But then once you're there, you're like, the people you can help and support, that's all you think about. Am I right?
Well, that's exactly right. And it's funny you say that too about the shyness. I mean, a lot of people think in order to be a leader in their company, right? Whether it's a Fortune 100 company, small business, whatever, and you're an employee, you think, well, I'm not charismatic, I'm not an extrovert. So they automatically think, well, leadership is not for me, right? And that is the absolute wrong thing, because there really is, as you know, there's really no one model for a leader. It takes on, I guess, potentially 8 billion different forms, right? As many people as there are on earth. It's about all the competencies that make up a leader, and which ones you're strong at, and which ones, quite frankly, the qualities you need in that particular situation, right? Because the situation you have today in a different company, in a different role, you may need other qualities to lean on to be more effective. So, and it's not all charisma, because that could wear very, very thin if there's nothing behind it. But yeah, there's too many people that equate charisma and extroversion to being a leader. And you're absolutely right. Those are the people we need to kind of give a voice to and say, hey, if you start working on this intentionally, you could be really surprised where you're at, a couple of years from now in terms of your career growth, should you be able to go and be strong enough to start that journey.
Through this, as you were evolving through this process of going, and you're still, working for an organization and then going and leading and starting your own organization. Was there a mentor that you worked with? Because mentorship is huge, right? I don't care what age you are. I feel like anybody and everybody should have one, my personal opinion. Mentor that you've spoken to, or, Brene Brown is a mentor too. So who are your mentors in your pocket?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, there are those mentors you've met, there's mentors you haven't, and one of the things I've noticed in the Maxwell organization is, a lot of the people just read John Maxwell books. And while they are life-changing and transformative, you need to hear other voices. And it's extremely important to do that. For me, I almost do a meta-analysis of the different voices that are out there to see kind of like what really works in real life, and as a coach, what I like to do is bring context to the content, because again, the content is only as good as how you're able to apply it, right? I often look at leadership as the same thing as physics, and people say, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, physics has theoretical physics and applied physics. There's two different disciplines, and the same thing with leadership. There's leadership theory, but then, what does it really look like when it's applied? So, that's kind of how I look at that. So that, in terms of mentors, it's all the authors I've read, it's Simon Sinek, it's Patrick Lencioni,
Yes.
it's, Ken Blanchard, Marcus Buckingham, a whole ton of them. And, they're mentors. I mean, when you actually intentionally read to understand, not just to get through it and say, hey, I read it. It really is. I can never give away any of my books because I have all sorts of notes inside and scribbles.
Same.
Color pen. So, because I'm trying to interact with it, and, it's amazing when you read these things and you think about it from your workplace lens, say, oh, wow, this applies to a situation that maybe you had long forgotten. So those are those mentors, again, from the, learning from the thought leaders, and then of course, mentors in the Maxwell organization who are further along. Certainly getting their point of view on what it's like to, how are they applying their knowledge, and certification? Are they more trainers? Because it's a very different thing. If you want to start doing corporate training and, you come up with different kinds of packages and, maybe you work with the company for a period of time, going through their entire organization, but it's a fairly finite sort of interaction, versus coaching, which, is something that is an ongoing interaction, for best results. Literally, you got to do it at least 6 months, every other week, if not a year or longer, to be able to see, that transformation, to be able to, as a coach, seeing that transformation is absolutely awesome. As someone who's a coachee, for instance, I've been coached, which I'll get to in a minute, and I've been in training sessions. The coaching makes the change. The training sessions are forgotten. It could be the best training in the world. You could actually literally have Simon Sinek in your organization give you a training. It's not going to stick. And that's really the difference. Those are great sort of as an introduction to leadership. They're great as a booster shot, so to speak, but they're not going to make any change. The change happens through coaching. And I think as a coach, a lot of times, there's a lot of people in the coaching world that just, put up a shingle and say, hey, I'm a coach, and they're asking you for you to make an investment, whereas the coach themselves never made that investment. So, and I think it's really important for the folks that are listening is, when you decide, hopefully you do, to get a coach, be very, very careful about who's coaching you, because if that person has not made significant investments in themselves as a coach, and that's not a college degree, it's a coaching practice. So they're going to another coach for a extended period of time. If they're not willing to do that at a much higher price point than they're charging you, run away. because they're not in it for the right reasons. They're not looking to get better as a coach. They're not looking to get better as a person. And it's very, very important for people to understand that.
I want to ask you a question that a lot of people may not know. They think they know the answer to, but they don't, because of the fact that the word coach gets thrown around all the time. And I know even myself, because I still do coaching, do you say consulting? You want to say a word that's going to resonate better because, like you said, anybody can throw that shingle up. Not everybody makes that investment. What is your definition? I feel like almost everybody has a different one, but what is your definition of a coach?
Yeah, I think of a coach. I think it's somebody who's absolutely 100% dedicated to your betterment. And that's why I like the coach word. Yes, I call my firm Prepared Leader Consulting. But in terms of, it's coaching, and what it is and what's on my website is one-on-one or group coaching. And to me, it's really, you got to be that 100% advocate for your clients. And that's what the difference is. When it's a mentor, that's more of a lighter touch sort of advice giving sort of engagement. When it's a coach, you're really in it for a specific goal, their goal, not yours, right? In a way that nobody else in their life can be. So yes, you could have a really successful parent, family member, spouse, but they're never going to be able to objectively guide you the way a coach can and be 100% for your outcome, because it's just not the way that relationship is set up. So yeah, really, for me, that's the definition is, that it's almost like an agent. You're 100% advocate.
So your focus is emerging leaders, right? So let everybody know why that is your focus and what drove you to really want to work with those who are emerging at this time of their life.
Well, what's interesting is it's funny, it's partly through even the beginnings of my corporate experience and understanding executive coaches, right? So, a lot of companies will have in their budgets money to get executives coached. And it's usually because there is a leadership failing, right? Somebody's been identified as, not having great leadership skills, and the company decides to pay the thousands upon thousands of dollars to get them, to improve. The problem with that is, what I have seen, obviously not in all cases, because the coachee, the executive, doesn't have skin in the game, they're not paying for it, they're really not completely 100% invested in it. I've seen a lot. And again, for those listening, this is not, an absolute thing. It's just what I've seen in my experience through various executives that I've worked with, that, what I've seen is not really transformation, but more knowing what to say and what not to say, in a public realm, or in print, like email or et cetera. But in your dealings with them, they're really not that much different, right? And then I thought, well, what if you actually coach people from the beginning of their careers, right? Before they were in leadership positions, before they even had any direct reports, ideally, you coach them through, evolving in their leadership, so they're actually ready. And that was, when I was thinking about, what I would call, my company, and it really hit me. It was one day during the shutdown. I was just staring outside. I didn't know what to call it. Think of all these snappy names, and most of the names you come up with have already been taken. And it just hit me that most people are unprepared to lead. It's not because they're bad people, right? It's not because they want to do a bad job. It's just because they haven't been equipped. And then before you know it, it's too late. And they're really not even set up for success, because even well-intentioned leaders that want to do good by their employees are often sidetracked by the crises of the moment, whether it's whether there's an actual issue they have to get through, whether it's closing of the quarter, you name it, any half dozen things that executives have to deal with at any given time. Leading their people ends up taking a back seat. So in the other way, if you're actually prepared to lead, then it's second nature. Then you're leading your people every day. And then when the fire drills come, well, the fire drills come, but you're not taking away from the people. So that's sort of how I thought. And the other thing, that I've talked about before is, we spend as parents, tens of thousands of dollars on private coaching just for our children to get into college and maybe a scholarship. And we'd spend it without a blink of an eye, whether it's sports, theater, music, certainly the SAT prep. Why wouldn't you spend, money after, because it's a huge return on your investment, to be able to do that, particularly if you start early in your career, et cetera. So that's kind of like, it's like this mindset shift is it's not coaching for remediation, it's coaching for high performance. And you want to get that done as early as possible. Now think about it. If that was actually embraced, on a wide scale, we had our 20 somethings engaged in coaching programs, from the start. When those folks are actually then, put into leadership positions, the culture that they can create, because they're now ready to lead, they have been ready to lead, likely for months and months and months, prior to actually getting the role. And when they're not in a leadership position, they're displaying leadership traits, that just make it in general a better workplace to operate in.
So tell me, what does coaching give to you?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, one of the first people I've coached, and I saw his, the outcome of the coaching engagement. It was so fulfilling. It really is, and more fulfilling than my own achievement. And when I saw that, when I saw that, that was so important to me, and I know that that's what means being in it for the right reasons. I think because coaching is so commoditized, I think probably 80-20 rule. 20% of the people are like you and I, who are in it for the right reasons, in it for the fulfillment of watching somebody else flourish.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say flourish, I mean beyond our level. My idea is to get my clients to go further in their careers faster than I did, right? And it's not about, oh wow, like you coach somebody, they're 32 years old, they're already a vice president and, in their, industry. Great. When are they going to be CEO?
Mm-hmm.
And, want to be clear with the audience. There's a lot of coaches out there that may not be so thrilled about that, right? And, which would display their kind of leadership they
Right.
would be, in a corporate setting.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about workplace culture, right? You mentioned it early on in our interview here is that, I know myself as a prior, someone who was put into a management position. I was not provided with the training of how to lead.
Mm-hmm.
You get this great promotion, you're all excited, you did the work, you met the goals, you exceeded the goals, and now you're thrown into this leadership position and without skills. Maybe they hand you a book, maybe they tell you to watch a TED Talk, but not every company gives you all, and especially in the nonprofit world, because everybody's wearing a million hats, and that's been my world for so long. Talk to us a little bit about workplace culture and about leadership and how do we make it better?
Yeah, I think, workplace culture, and I think I mentioned it earlier, there's so much great content out there, and there has been for 100 years, right? Even before John Maxwell, who's in his mid 70s right now, he learned from Zig Ziglar, and Jim Rohn and others, and it's almost crazy that, we're in a time in our careers that workplace culture seems to be getting worse. And the culture is of stress, right? And whether it's the earnings per share stress, that you deal with, in a publicly traded company, and the stress that comes to meet a number, whether it's the stress, just a naturally stressful environment of law enforcement in the hospital setting, and even in those areas, you get so much high stress. The culture is just not good. It's not set up for success because, again, people in leadership positions in those areas that want to do a good job. Let's be clear. People don't want to go, to any job and suck at it. People don't want to suck at being a leader either. But it just takes a back seat because of the stresses of, your internal company, the external forces, your company competition, or other things that can impact the culture. And I think, corporate culture is just made up of, how are people interacting with each other on a day-to-day basis. I think one of the most amazing dichotomies I've seen in my career is that I've loved the people I've worked with. My project teams have been amazing, and when you think about pharmaceutical industry or consumer products industry, people have their notions of what it's like, not having worked in them. But let me tell you, the boots on the ground are great people. I think where it starts falling apart is, in the middle and higher tier levels, and that's where the stress is on them, right? And the stress then turns, to the people that are doing the work. And I think that's where it broke down. I remember thinking about it one day, I was like, wow, I absolutely love my team, but I hate my management. I mean, could you imagine? Wow, if
Yes.
if I loved the team and loved the management, I mean, everybody deserves to be led well. And one of the common threads and the type of project management I do is cross-functional. So you're dealing with all sorts of different people at all different experience levels. And when you have people full stop that do not agree with how they're being treated, in aggregate as an employee, that common thread, it's sad. I once had somebody who was a couple levels higher than me that started wearing an Apple Watch, and like clockwork every single day when he walked into the building, his heart rate raised and stayed raised at that level. Not tremendously to a dangerous level, but about 15 beats per minute, being inside that building. Not
Isn't that
good.
horrible?
It's
No,
that's
that's
horrible.
no,
That's horrible.
totally horrible. And workplace wellness is important. That I believe totally when your mind, your body, and your spirit are balanced, you'll do better business. And we, as coaches and the coaching world out there have a responsibility to ensure that, in a way that those that we come across and deal with, if you're not a client, we're not going to coach you just to coach you. But if we hear certain keywords, at times we may ask you, do you have a coach? Because we know that there may be a need for that, not because we're totally trying to sell our services. It's really just if we key in to what we hear. And if we know somebody, like you just said, is 15 beats per minute difference every time they walk into a building, you know, that's an unfortunate thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, but to the point of not selling, if you're not selling, you're not serving, right? And I think about like if somebody, again, when I started my journey, coaching for emerging professionals in their 20s was truly not a thing, back then. So now, people like me, there's a guy down in Atlanta, Tim Elmore, who's been doing it for a long time. And, his focus is growing leaders. In fact, that's the name of his company, but that's few and far between. I think a lot of coaches, when they get certified, whether it's through IPEC or Maxwell Leadership or any of the other number of firms that are out there, they go running right to the executive or to the high-end business owner, and because they know that it's profitable. I mean, it's completely sailing over a market, right? And for me, that's, the market I want to serve. And you think about the opportunity that's out there, you know, especially because of social media and how you could utilize that to bring this into their awareness, whether it is Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or other things, YouTube channel. And then because they're going to make the change. Generation Z, not even the millennials, they're just like us, Generation X, just like the boomers haven't, as a generation really leaned into what this is, focusing on the positive. What can you do as a positive? We can all focus on the negative things that are going on in the world, right? It's easy to complain, it's easy to point fingers, it's easy to be mad. Or you can make the choice to say, hey, well, what can I do in my life, right? What can I do in my life to impact how I show up at work and how I show up at home? And when you go through this coaching journey, that's exactly, one of the outcomes is like, well, wait a minute, this is what I do have control over. And this is how I can change things. So when you look at Gen Z and Generation Alpha, coming up behind them, we have enough of us coaches out there that truly believe in that next generation, and they are the key to a better world. That's where you start. You need a generational change in this, but you also need coaches to work together cohesively. And actually, the vision that I had a couple of years ago that I've been trying to coalesce is an entire network of coaches that are coming together to actually make change. And it's not just to have a healthy seven-figure business, mid six-figure business for yourself. It's about how do you get everyone together to actually change the system. Because again, don't forget, I've been in three different Fortune 100 companies, and the training that they pay millions of dollars for is awful. Absolutely, and it's not their
Right.
fault. They were just sold. They were just sold by people that knew how to sell themselves, but they weren't in it for the right reasons. We need the right people with a servant heart that actually want to make the change that Simon Sinek and Adam Grant are talking about. But in order to do it, there's enough work for everyone. I mean, you literally need tens of thousands of coaches to be able to band together and say, hey, let's take every corner of this country and ultimately the world and see what is it we can do to kind of work together and make this change again together. And that's why coaching is so important in training, because training is like a competition. Oh, my training program is better than yours, right?
Right.
But coaching is coaching. Coaching is bringing somebody through a process. So you coach how you coach. The idea is we're all coaching together. There's no better or worse. There's getting people from point A to point B and all the way up to where they want to go. That's the vision that I see, and that's what again the Maxwells of the world, haven't done. Because again, I'm seeing the workplace, and it's no better than it was when I first started.
And it's interesting. You said a couple of key things I want to just drill down on a little bit, and that is true. We live a lot of times in a scarcity model,
Yeah.
right? So if coaches working together, oh my goodness, then how are we going to get clients? Because they're going to like you better than they're going to like me, and all of that. And we've been trained that way, right? Because who's going for the job or who's going to get the promotion? It's usually not 10 people, it's only one. It's not a team environment.
Right.
So what Right. So when it comes to that piece, I couldn't agree with you more that coaches working and first of all, not only is all of the way we coach different. We can't coach one size fits all for every client is so uniquely different. What works for one is not going to work for the other. When I went to school for coaching, they wanted me to come, and I'm sure you've been in this place too. Who are you going to coach? Right. So they wanted me to pick, women between the ages of, or whatever it is. And for me, it was all about connection.
Mhm.
Anything that was related to how to connect better to whatever you wanted to connect to. That was what resonated with me. You even talked about how you chose the name of your business. It's very similarly to how I chose my name. It just comes to you. So those free people who may be going through that whole process of how do I name my business? It's never going to happen. All of these questions and things that you're going through, if you're newly starting, whether it's in the coaching industry or different, these are all normal pains that we go through in order to build and grow businesses. But one of the things that I found out early on, just like you, is that not all coaches like to work together because there is that scarcity space. And we will do so much better in this industry if we do work together and share in programming and share ideas and come together. And that is how we change workplace culture, because a lot of times, even in the workplace, there's so much of the butting heads within departments, never mind separate businesses. If we have to lead by example, I think, Jeff, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that scarcity mindset. If you start doing just a little bit very basic math, there's truly not enough coaches. You just talk about the United States. There's not enough coaches to serve all the people out there. There's more than enough business for everyone, probably 10 times over. So that's where people need to flip their perspective, and start working together. Because then, if you truly are committed to the change, you see that. Also too, as I noticed the scarcity mindset, through my journey here, I realized that even executives that are making maybe a $400,000 or $500,000 salary, not even talking about their bonus or their or their stock options, etc., just the salary alone, they lead from scarcity. They make
Yes.
decisions to keep their own high level, comp package to the
Oh, yes.
to the exclusion of the people. Yes, we all know that. Sometimes it needs to be said specifically, but a lot of times the decisions are made to the detriment of not just the people, but the company that's paying them that fat salary.
Well, that's also because the leader at the top, whether it's a board or whomever it is using that scarcity model to make that person work harder.
Right.
That's the carrot. You're not going to have a job if you don't do the
Right.
job, if you don't reach the goals. How you reach them, they're like, that's up to you. But if you don't reach them, you won't have a job anymore. And I remember being in my 30s, always being afraid of being let
Mhm.
go,
Right.
always like having to push harder, like working 60 to 80-hour work weeks with 2 kids, because my leader at that specific time was emailing me at 1 or 2 in the morning. And if I didn't reply, that was a problem, right? Nowadays, though, that doesn't fly as much anymore. I don't see that. I don't do that. But I
Right.
don't see that happening. So the culture can change, and as long as we all buy into it. And I do feel that mental health since COVID has been more of a topic that's
Mhm.
open than before. So when I went for coaching, that word coach was almost like a bad word. Like nobody understood it. I feel like now a little bit more so than ever, at least people are having that conversation and willing to invite coaches to speak at things and talk to groups and understand the investment, right?
Right. And the other thing too, again, going with the abundance mindset is yes, as coaches, we should all be working together to affect the change, the vision of the change, of those folks that truly care. Like I mentioned Simon Sinek a couple times, but Adam Grant as well, right? They're talking about the betterment of the world of work, right? If those folks, other coaches that are listening, truly want to band together and make the change, yes, we can all do it together. There's truly not enough of us to go around. But we also have to then coach people inside companies to be
Mm-hmm.
coaches themselves
That's
for
right.
the same reason, right? So we it's like train the trainer. So who are the people inside major corporations or mid-size or again entrepreneurial efforts, so that you don't want to be needed anymore, right? And that
Right.
sounds crazy, right? Like what do you mean? Like you should want your client forever? No, no, no. Like you get them to a journey, you get them where they need to go, and then you help them to say, okay, well, this coaching process, how can I use this as a leader so that when I have 3 or 4 direct reports, I'm not just managing them. Who wants to be managed? It's like being handled. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're managing disease, right?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
diagnosis. You want to lead people, right? So when you think about that, and then you're prepared along the way, you're leading people because you're a coach, right? So us as coaches, we need to be training people so that they're ready to coach their direct reports, whether they have 2 or 3 of them, whether they're leading a department, or whether they're leading other leaders. That's really where it falls apart. And until people understand, that abundance mindset of how to make that change and really buy into that and go that way, that's really where that change makes sense. And again, that's why focusing on that young generation, people that understand that, that literally the neuroplasticity is still there, in
Right.
their 20s to say, you know what, that actually makes sense. Like, let's do this. That's what's going to make the change.
So, Jeff, how do people find you?
So the website preparedleaderconsulting.com. So that's the best way to find me. You can kind of just read about the offerings that I have right now. Shoot me an email, schedule on the Calendly link that I have up there. And for me, that's just an easy way for folks to say, hey, let's have a talk. Let's talk about what we're doing. For me right now, I'm really leaning in on the group coaching model. I think it's awesome to be able to grow in community. And when you have engagements, when you have 5, 10 people going on a journey together, that whether they're not in the same organization, so you're able to be candid with your hair down, and you're able to grow together. You're able to share your challenges together, and you do this over a month to month to month basis. That's where that change happens. So right now, that's where my focus is. Also, do one-on-one coaching as well for those that are really targeted on they're at point A, they want to get to point B, and they want to get there in short order. That's definitely a different engagement. But again, just something that I also offer as well.
Is there anything else before I ask you the last question that you want to share with those who are listening?
Well, yeah, I mean, leadership is for everyone, and actually, I don't know when this podcast is going to drop, but I do have a live event tomorrow. And, that's the theme of the event is really getting into folks' awareness of, whether you You don't have to be an executive. You don't have to own a company. You don't have to have a team yet to be a leader. Like, everyone is a leader. Everyone is born with the potential and the capability to grow in their leadership, which leadership is a battery of qualities. It's not one word. Jim Maxwell has 21. There's probably another 20, right? In addition to that. And when you start working on all of those qualities together, that is what means growing in your leadership. And that's what it means by saying it is indeed for everyone. So you lead, at the very least, you're leading yourself first, right? And then, if you're a parent, of course, if you're a parent out there and you're not yet in a leadership position, well, you are, because you're a parent, right? And leadership in the end of the day is parenting. And the parallels, it gets uncomfortable for folks that lead in a way that is not like that, but it truly is just like parenting. Simon Sinek says it in his book, Leaders Eat Last. And I'm glad he made that parallel. But if you don't have a team yet, if you're not a business owner, if you're not an executive, you're at the very least leading yourself, you're at the very least leading your family.
So very true. And, Simon Sinek is one of my faves too. So, him, Brene Brown, Ed Grant, they're all so many more. Jason Goldberg. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jason. He's amazing.
I haven't yet. And it's funny you say that. When you think about what's out there, it's all there for you. Again, you get coached. You do self-education on these other folks that, if you're not a reader, get the audiobook version on it, right? Instead of listening to the same songs over and over again, on satellite radio. Put on something that's going to actually, get, something different to get in your head. And for God's sakes, don't listen to 24/7 news, either side. Replace that. Could you imagine? If you're sitting out there and you start realizing, well, how much do I listen to one or the other? I don't have any regard for either of them, either side, right? So if you replace that time that you spend listening to that, whether it's the morning, midday, or the afternoon, night, and you replace it with content that's actually going to help you, again, listening to those things are not going to make you a better employee, better business owner, better executive, better parent, better spouse. None of it. Why do we do it, right? It doesn't even help us with our day-to-day problems, right? It just makes us mad or sad or other negative emotions. So replace it with content that's actually going to help you. In addition, that's where the secret sauce happens, Jodi, right? So you get yourself in a coaching arrangement, whether it's a one-on-one coach or whether it's a group coaching engagement, an executive level mastermind that some people have that they put together, and then you're spending your spare time, reading and educating yourself on all the latest principles and find out what works for yourself. Those are the people that rock it up to in their leadership, and it shows. They're the people that you want to be around, right? We all know those people. We just don't know why they are the way they are. It's because they, in very extremely small pockets, they've decided that, hey, whether they have a coach or not, they're really growing on their own and making sure that they are that person. And the final thing I'll say is, as a leader, and if you're a leader out there right now, you have to ask yourself a very important question. Are you the kind of leader that someone will pick up the phone and call even when they don't have to? When you are long retired and you cannot help them in any way, shape, or form? And if you're not, and you know the answer to that, and if you're not that leader, why not? And what are you going to do today to make that change?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I used to listen to Jason Goldberg, and I was working at American Heart for 80 hours a week. And he had changed jobs and roles and spoke about it. And I'm like, I could never do that. I could never be like him. I want to be like him. And he wrote a book called Prison Break, which is about breaking out of the, that 9 to 5 and doing that other job. And it took me a long time, but just even that one little thing that put into my ear that it's possible, right?
Mhm.
And then you find someone local, because Jason is not, find someone local who takes that little nugget, that golden nugget of information that can help you make it happen, right? And bring it to fruition, because I know that I couldn't have done it by myself. I needed a coach to help me get there. And that's something that, we love being able to do for other people. So Jeff, before I get to my last question, just can people find you on social media?
Yes. So right now I've been leaning in mostly on Instagram. I'm going to be working with somebody to kind of build out LinkedIn. and YouTube channel, etc. But right now it's at Jeff Massone on Instagram. It would be the best place to find me.
That's good. Nice and easy. Your name. Can't beat it. That's the best way to go. So, last question that I'm asking everybody is, what is the legacy that you're creating now that you want to leave behind?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when I mentioned earlier, starting the swim team in my high school, and it's such a cool to have a legacy, right? At such a young age, and it kind of gets that word in your mind, and what do you want to leave behind? And for me, it really is, everybody that I meet, everybody that I coach, I want them to be better for it. And we all know that hasn't always been the case, right? Especially before the journey. There are, many people where, you maybe it wasn't the best interaction or the best season of your life, and they don't remember, they don't know you as the person that you strive to be. But going forward, right, leaving that legacy and of being a person that's known for trying to make the world a better place.
Well, that is a wonderful, wonderful legacy and beautiful. And I really appreciated your time today, Jeff, for sharing all the things that you are all about and how you're helping emerging leaders and coaching and creating a new business for yourself that will make a difference and help you create this legacy that you really want to as you move forward in your life. Beautiful.
Thank you, Jodi. I really appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. And again, one more time, what's the website?
It's preparedleaderconsulting.com.
Wonderful. Jeff Massone, thank you so much for being a guest this week. And I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So, what small or large step are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goals? Jeff, I look forward to hearing from you again soon with an update.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon, Jodi, for sure.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.